Welcome, everybody. I am so happy to see you here on this Saturday morning with yet another amazing program with Jean Williams, our librarian extraordinaire who knows everything about birds. I'm always impressed by that. Just a couple things. I want to ask you to keep your videos off during Jean's presentation so that because it's distracting during the presentation, and that I would like to keep us all muted during the presentation as well. You can ask questions in the chat, and after Jean's presentation, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions directly or in the chat at that time. So I'm going to also thank the foundation. The Cary Library Foundation supports all of our adult programming, and if you donate to them, then you also help us with all of our adult programming. So we appreciate that. If you've been here before with us, you know that Jean Williams is one of our reference librarians who has lived in Lexington for many years and is an avid bird watcher. And she really brings a lot of knowledge and experience to this show. So I'm going to hand it over to Jean, and again, we're going to start her presentation just now.
Thank you very much, Mina. It's really nice to have all you people back again. Quite amazing to me. This is my third program and probably the last one for a while. It's going to focus today on bird song. I think of all the wildlife that live around us, the birds are probably the most noticeable because of the noise that they make. It attracts our attention. And I think that birds make more noise than any other kind of animal does. And certainly there's more variety in the noises that birds make than other animal sounds, so we tend to notice it. It attracts our attention. Sometimes bird noises seem like music to our ears, and I think that's anthropomorphizing, but we call it bird song. We say that birds are singing. Birds, but really it's just noise that birds make. And how do they make these noises? Birds have an organ in their bodies that mammals don't have. It's called the syrinx, and it's part of the trachea. It's best developed and controlled in the passerine birds that are the perchers and the birds that we call songbirds. With human vocal cords, their cords vibrate in the larynx and near the top of the throat. But the syrinx is located at the bottom of the trachea, right near the beginning of the two bronchial tubes that are going into the bird's lungs. So it's possible for the bird to modulate the sound in both of the bronchial tubes. And it can generate, some birds can generate two sounds at once and make a sort of a chord sound out of it. But the walls of this syrinx vibrate. It's not even really clearly understood by biologists how the sound is produced, but the walls of the syrinx vibrate, and there's a bony structure at the junction of the bronchial tubes called the pecillus, and that generates pulses of sound. And the birds have incredible muscular control of the syrinx and can just do amazing things with it. Birds' ears are a little different from ours. They don't have the outer ear that can concentrate the sound. Some of the night flying birds, like owls, have facial structures that serve to focus the sound, bring the sound to their ears, but most birds don't have that. And human ears actually can hear a much wider frequency of sound than birds can. However, the way that birds' brains operate for sound is very different from humans. Birds have something that we would call perfect pitch. Their able to discriminate and remember pitches, the timbre of the sound, the combination of the pure sound and the harmonics. They can discriminate timbre much better than humans. Seabirds, for instance, are notoriously good at discriminating pitches. And something you probably have seen this in the movies, emperor penguins, they can pick out the unique sound of their own mate's voice amid these hundreds and thousands of squawking penguins. They can find their own mate. Birds also hear shorter notes than we can. The birds can hear faster. It's really a brain process. It's not an ear difference, but human brains process sound in bites of about a 20th of a second. Birds can discriminate up to a 200th of a second. So this means where we hear one sound, only a bird might hear as many as 10 separate notes. So some bird song is incredibly complex, and the human ear can't follow it. An example, and I hope to play this later, is the wood thrush. It has a very complex sound that to us sounds kind of like a blur or a buzzing kind of sound, but they can discriminate all these individual little pitches. It takes birds a relatively long time in their lifespan to learn to control their sound production. Baby birds make squeaking or crying noises in the nest. Some of them can even make a noise in the egg. But learning to produce the adult sound, it takes them weeks, even months of practice. And for a human, this would correspond to taking years to learn to sing the song. There is an ornithologist who's really interested in birdsong. His name is Donald Kreutzma. He's originally from Michigan. He worked at UMass Amherst for many years, and later on he was at Cornell Ornithological Laboratory. He's retired now, but he studied the development of birdsong in several species of birds, mainly a bird called the Bewick wren, which lives in the western part of the country. He wanted to learn how the adult song develops in a bird and how it changes as the bird grows. He found that these wrens initially copy the father's sound, that they hear the father's song in their early weeks. And then later, when they flew off to live on their own territory, their songs evolved and changed and became more like the songs of neighboring wrens that they were hearing. So it's a very interesting topic of how bird songs change and develop. And if you'd like to read about it, he has a book called The Singing Life of Birds, which we have at the library, and it comes with a CD. If you get really interested in birdsong, you will definitely want to read his works. So then the question comes, why do birds sing? And this is in some ways, I think, even more complicated question than how they sing. We don't understand really why birds sing because we don't really understand what it is to be a bird and how their brains function and what their concerns are, because birds are very different from us and they live life very differently than any mammals do. The short answer, though, to why birds sing is mostly courtship and defense of their territory and defense of their bodies. Recently, scientists are discovering that many birds have very complicated vocabulary. And a lot of the study of birdsong depended on the development of the technology to study birdsong, the microphones that could pick up the sound, the ways of recording it, the ways of making the recordings visual with sonograms. This was all basically started in the 1970s and 80s, and then a way to analyze the sonograms with computers that help the scientists organize and find patterns in songs that were in tape recordings of thousands of songs. But even so, we're still, I think, pretty far away from understanding the language of birds and what they're saying, what their sounds mean to each other, what their sounds mean to birds of other species. Birds have a very complicated vocabulary, as I've said. They produce different sounds and variations of their sounds that mean different kinds of predators, or they're calling to each other to come for certain different kinds of foods. Some sounds are meant just to make connections between birds of the same species. Some sounds are warnings to stay away, aimed either at their own species or predators. Or some birds learn to react to the alarms or the food calls of other species, and some birds don't react at all. And that's a whole interesting topic as well. Bird songs, by and large, are specific to their species. Each bird has individual qualities to its sound. And individual birds within the species have their own particular sounds. These distinctions are generally just way too fine for our ears to grasp. So for us, one blue jay sounds pretty much like any other blue jay. But we can detect differences between species, and we can learn to tell the difference between one bird's sound and another bird's sound. And if we learn to recognize bird songs, it goes a long way to making us aware of the existence of the avian life that's all around us. And to my mind, I like to think of what the poet Mary Oliver wrote: to pay attention, this is our endless and proper work. So let's listen to some of the songs that birds around us are singing right now. This is not the best time of year to listen to bird song, because birds sing much more in the spring and in the early summer during the mating and breeding season. That's when their concerns are highest, to make their presence known. But now the summer is beginning to wane. The birds are getting quieter and quieter. Some species have stopped really singing at all, and we're just hearing their calls. Some birds are hardly making any noise. They're getting ready to fly. They're flocking up. They don't need to defend themselves anymore. They want, in fact, to group together. In some ways, it makes it easier to study the sounds of the birds that are still making sound, because there's not so much competition out there, less sound to distract us from the sounds that we are hearing. So today, I'm going to focus on the birds that I'm hearing right now in my backyard and around town. And you may be hearing, I hope you'll be hearing these same birds. If you're not hearing all these birds now, then come back to this video next June and take a refresher course, and you can learn again. Now I'm going to use the Birds of the World database. I'm going to share my screen with you. And this database is available to people who are Lexington residents. If you're not a Lexington resident, you may be able to get it through your library's website, or you can subscribe on your own if you want to, from Cornell Ornithological Laboratory.
Jean,
If your library, pardon?
I just wanted to remind you to enable that sound so people can.
Yes, I will do that, yeah. So if your library doesn't subscribe to Birds of the World, you could ask them to subscribe to it. It's not terribly expensive for a library. So here we go. I'm going to share now. And whoop. Let's see, where are we? Here we are. Okay, so this.
You were going to turn your video off as well.
Oh yeah. Okay. Let's see. Oh, it may be too late for me to do that. Okay. If you could do that for me, Nina, that would be great. I don't think, oh yeah, wait, I can do it. Okay. All right, good. So here's the Birds of the World database, and right now they have on their homepage a beautiful violet green swallow, which unfortunately doesn't live around here. It's a western swallow. So I'm going to start off with a very, unfortunately, very common bird, the house sparrow. I say unfortunately because it's not a native species to North America, but it's widespread all over the world now. And I just want you to know what its sound is like, because you want to recognize it. So now I'm going to go down to library. This one is a typical noise of a house sparrow.
LNS catalog number 14439.
Turn your volume up. Okay. So it's basically cheep, 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 cheep. It doesn't make any other sounds besides that. There is one here, though, that, let's see, second row there. This is what they sound like when they're all clustered together in a bush. So this is what you'll hear when you're downtown and they throw breadcrumbs out on the sidewalk, and all the house sparrows gather. So now we're going to go to probably the noisiest bird right now, and that's the blue jay. There it is. Also widespread year-round in the eastern United States. And the blue jay makes all kinds of different calls. It doesn't really have what we call a song, because none of its calls sound very musical to us. But it makes alarm calls, and this is what you're likely to hear. This is, some people call it the jeer sound. I call it JJ sound. They use this when they're nervous about something, when they're trying to make contact with other jays, when they're mobbing other birds. Mobbing is something that birds do to get rid of predators, typically a hawk or an owl or a cat, a snake, something that's dangerous to the birds. They will join together and everybody yell about it, and basically they blow the cover of the hawk. And if the hawk doesn't have the element of surprise, it's really not very dangerous to birds. So if
Hey,
all
Jean,
birds are, yes.
are we supposed to be seeing the actual page with the blue jay? Because we're all seeing just the main page with the beautiful green bird on the front.
Oh, good heavens. I don't know why that's happening. You mean you're not seeing the sonograms, or?
No.
No.
So I wonder if maybe you shared the wrong screen.
Well, I don't know. Let me go back and see what I can do. I'm going to stop the share. Okay. Now I'm back. I'm sorry this is happening. I don't know why. All right, let's try again. Okay, I'm sharing computer sound. Now it's sharing. Okay.
Now we're
So,
seeing your page with the Zoom screen.
with the Zoom screen on it. Okay, so let me move to, let me try to bring up the birds of the world again. Okay, does that show?
We see the main page.
You're seeing it. Okay, now let's move here. If this doesn't work, then we're in trouble. Now,
It's working. It's great.
can you see the blue jay?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. We'll start over here with blue jay. Okay. Now, can you see the sonograms?
Yes.
The pictures. Okay. So here's the jeer or J sound of the blue jay. You probably heard this a million times in your yard. Maybe you didn't realize it was a blue jay, but that's the blue jay. Now, when multiple birds start calling together, that's the mobbing sound, where they're trying to chase away a hawk or an owl. When you hear that going on in your backyard, you know there's something out there that's really bothering these birds. Now I'm going to play, this is a lower intensity alarm sound. Some people call this the squeaky gate sound. It didn't really sound like that to me, but I guess it sounds that way to some people. It's a little, almost a kind of melodic sound that the birds make. One of the many different noises that a blue jay can make. Now there's another sound that is made only by female blue jays. It's a rattly sound. Here it is. That kind of little rattle in the throat sound is a noise that female blue jays make when something's getting a little too close to their nest, or when they're trying to contact their mate in a flock. Blue jays are also really good at mimicking other birds, and they can make a fantastic imitation of a red-tailed hawk. And I don't know really why they use that. Some people have suggested cynically that they use it to scare other birds away so that they can get all the food themselves. But I don't know if that's true. The other bird that's making a lot of noise now in our neighborhood is the black-capped chickadee. Now let me know whether this shifts for you here. Oops, not if I don't spell it right here. Black-capped chickadee. What am I doing? I'm not, if you don't spell perfectly here, there we go. Okay, so can everyone see that? Black-capped chickadee stays year-round here, and it stays pretty noisy all year round, although its song changes a little bit through the year. Now, the real song of the chickadee is what we call the "Hey, sweetie" sound, and this is it. Now this sound is one that stays uniform all over Chickadeedom, except for in a couple places. Donald Kreutzma discovered that the chickadees on the island of Martha's Vineyard sing this song sort of backwards. They sing "Sweetie Hey" instead of "Hey, Sweetie." So it's not really still being studied why this has happened to those chickadees, but I guess because it's an isolated community on Martha's Vineyard, the birds somehow learned to sing it that way, and they've all copied each other. This is the Chickadees Song, which is very complex in terms of how many Ds there are. And nobody really knows why they vary it, but they do vary it a lot. And it seems to correspond with something that's happening to the chickadees, like how many Ds means that that it's a human there. So many more Ds means it's a hawk or it's a crow or some other predator. We don't really know, but there is a great variety. You can hear a lot of variety. Oh, there's the "Hey, Sweetie" in this bird. How many Ds? So this bird is varying the chicks in the beginning of the song and the Ds at the end of the song quite a great deal. It's ending with a lot of sweeties. So that's the chickadee. And as I say, the chickadee is still making sounds. I don't hear very many of the "Hey, Sweeties" at the moment. It's mostly the chickadee sound that it's doing now. But the "Hey, Sweeties" will come back in the spring in the breeding season. And now I'm going to move to the Northern Cardinal.
So,
There's another, yes.
Jean, Anita said that a blue jay just came to her window. That was when you were showing the blue jay. And I just got another message that said there's a chickadee outside my window responding to the audio.
Oh, isn't that funny? Yeah, that's great. So here's the cardinal. This is the female. Here's the bright red male. Cardinal, another bird that stays year-round, but its voice really changes a lot during the year. The song of the cardinal, this is the common song that you'll hear. You can hear there's variety in it, but the tone quality is the same. Here's another. This guy's saying a lot of different things. But that first part, this part, is what you will hear the bird singing over and over again. In the spring, it'll find a high perch somewhere high up in the trees and just sing that song. That's its territory song. That's its mate calling song. Birds will do a duet with one or two of them singing together sometimes. Then the other song, the sound that we're hearing right now, though, is this what I call the clicking sound, where they're just communicating with each other. The two of the pair are constantly in contact with this clicking noise that they make. Here it is. And if you're in the presence of of a pair of cardinals, you'll often hear them just clicking back and forth, especially in the evening. I notice that it's like they're catching up with each other, making sure that they're both going to go to bed at the same time, get into the same tree. It's just a constant communication. The other thing that we often hear now are the juvenile sounds, which are very similar to the adult, but you can tell it's a little more childish. Here's it. So if you hear that sound in the bushes, that's a baby cardinal that's calling for its parent. They're pretty much past that stage now, but so you won't likely hear the loud singing sound at this time of year, but you'll hear that clicking noise that they keep making to each other. Now, the American robin is another one that has changed now. It was a great singer in the spring, not singing anymore, but just doing what I call the clucking sound. To me, they sound a little bit like chickens, but here's the call that robins use, and they're using it to communicate with each other, but also I think it's an alarm call, a sort of warning sound. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the singing sound. What I wanted to play was the clucking sound, which is this one, I think. Okay. Yeah, that's a typical robin clucking sound. And when they have something to be angry about, they get very insistent and louder. So here's yet another bird that has not singing but making noise, and this is the catbird. There's the gray catbird. It's a beautiful bird. The catbird is going to migrate probably at the end of September, beginning of October. They'll be gone. And right now they're not singing. They have very complicated mimicking kind of songs that they sing, but they are doing their cat sound, which is why they're called catbirds. And here's an example of it. If you have a catbird in your yard and it's eating the berries off of your dogwood or something like that, and you come into the yard, the catbird might not be happy to see you there, and you might hear it starting to complain about you, and with that cat sound. Here's another example. This one's not too catty. There we go. So just some general clucks, but you did hear some cat sounds in there. Sometimes they really sound exactly like an angry cat. There are a bunch of little birds in our area that have very big voices. One of them that's singing quite a bit now is the American goldfinch. Be sure if you look on this database that you call it American goldfinch, because there are lots of other kinds of goldfinches in the world, and you'll find some that don't look at all like our yellow one here. This is the male goldfinch, the female's over here on the right. The goldfinch stays with us all year, but it really makes noise in the summertime. Goldfinch, excuse me, they breed much later than other birds in our area, so their they're still making quite a lot of, doing a lot of singing. It's mostly the males. And they have a beautiful little flight song too, which they're singing right now. But here's an example of what a male goldfinch sounds like. Very complicated song. You can hear that this bird has a lot of different phrases to its song, and it repeats them in different arrangements. This is a common thing with songbirds. Some songbirds have huge numbers of different phrases that they can call upon to put together into a song. The most notorious one is the brown thrasher, that has more than 2,000 phrases that it can use, and it uses them in various combinations. And when you have the ability to take a sonogram like this and study it and analyze it by computer, you can find patterns in these songs that might identify the individual bird, might have its own particular combination of these phrases. As you can see, it's something that's very complex. In the goldfinches, it's mainly the males that sing. The females make little, very short versions of the songs that are not nearly so complicated. But another thing that the male goldfinches do is they sing while they're flying. Most birds don't sing when they're flying, but the goldfinch flies in kind of swoops. I always think it looks like somebody doing the breaststroke in swimming, where they fly for a bit and then rest, and then fly for a bit and then rest, and then fly for a bit. And when they're singing while they're flying, the song matches the movement of their bodies. So this is what it sounds like when a goldfinch is flying across in front of you. You will hear this, the pattern to the song matches the pattern of their flight. Each one of these little chips is a swoop. You can see you can hear that it's rhythmic. It's all in a pattern. It's swoop and swoop and swoop and swoop. So another bird that we're still being treated to is the house wren, the great singer of the summer. There was a little house wren, and they are migrating birds, so they'll be leaving pretty soon, but they're still making noise. What I find really interesting about the house wren is that you can hear it doing what's kind of a whisper song. It's like a quiet version of their song, and I'm not sure whether this is a nearly adult house wren that's practicing, just a baby kind of quietly practicing his dad's song before he brings it out to the big stage, or whether he's building up his muscle control. I'm just not sure why they do this in late summer, but the loud sounds that you hear from the house wrens earlier in the summer are now oftentimes just a little quiet sound coming from the bushes or the trees. Here's an example of the full song of the house wren. You can tell that the house wren is a real warbler. Now, as you can see, if you follow the sonogram, there is a little bit of a lag. I know on the Zoom with the sonogram is about 1/4 of a second delay from the sound, but you can see that the pattern is repeating. The phrases that he's using in his song get repeated. This individual bird, this is his signature song. Other house friends will have a slightly different song, but the commonalities are that it's this complex rolling kind of burbling trill. Now the house wren also has an angry sound, an annoyance sound or a threatening sound, and this is what it sounds like. House wrens are very feisty birds, and they will use this little chattering, angry sound often. So the other wren in our area is the Carolina wren, and this is as I talked about the Carolina wrens in the earlier programs, it's a bird that's moved into our area from the south in our lifetime. And it has a completely different sound, which I'm still hearing. I heard one singing this morning. This is the Carolina wren's very loud, particular song. Some people use the mnemonic device, teacher, 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 or tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle. It's more of a tea kettle one, isn't it? Let's see. This is a much simpler song than the house wren, and it's just basic phrase repeated 4 or 5 times over and over and over again, very loud. In the spring and the early summer, they are just, they're an incredibly dominant part of our soundscape right now. There was another one down here that I wanted to play.
LNS catalog number 191224.
Begin.
That little sound in the background was a wood peewee that sneaked in there. So the Carolina wren is pretty distinctive, but there is another bird that you may hear sometimes that sounds a lot like it. And I just wanted to point out some of the differences. The common yellowthroat is a little bird that lives in wetlands. And if your house is close to wetlands, or if you're walking near a marsh, you might hear a common yellowthroat. And they are still singing. I heard one the other day. And it sounds a lot like Carolina wren. So I just want you to hear the difference. The mnemonic device that we use for the common yellowthroat is witchety, 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 witchety. So as you can hear, it's very similar to the Carolina wren. And I don't know really what to tell you for the difference, except that the common yellowthroat will always be close to water. It'll be in a marshy area. So if you're in a wetland area, you might guess that it's probably going to be a yellowthroat rather than a Carolina. Now, another bird that we're hearing here, still singing, excuse me, is the eastern wood peewee. This is a beautiful little bird, and it's unfortunately, it's one of the birds that's in decline in our area. Partly because it is a migrator. It has to go down into South America and through Central America, and its winter habitat is really threatened. So I definitely have noticed that we're hearing fewer and fewer of these. But this year I did hear some, and a place where you can often hear wood peewee is in the woods on either side of the reservoir. One has been living there, or maybe two or three of them have been living there for years, and they come back every spring, and they're still singing. This is a bird that's a flycatcher, and it will sit up on the edge of a branch and hawk out, meaning it flies off the branch, grabs a bird, flies back to the grabs an insect, flies back to the branch, and all the time it's singing. Now it has an interesting song. The male does this singing, a very simple pattern, repeated over and over, with one little variation. It sings its name, so it sings Peewee, 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 very widely spaced apart, those Peewees. And then every fourth or fifth one will say Peewoo, Peewoo, with its voice going down. So we can hear this and watch it on the sonogram. You'll be able to see. That's the Peewee. And here's a Peewoo. That's the Peewee. Okay. Now there's another one here that's good. Let's see. Got this one here. That's the Peewee. If there is another wood peewee in the vicinity, it will answer sometimes. But mainly you can see how far apart these are. Some other birds. So this is one bird song that you cannot miss, and you will hear it now. If you haven't known it before, you'll recognize it when you hear it, and you can impress all your friends and say, that's a wood peewee. Now another bird that I'd like to show you is the Song Sparrow, and we talked about this in one of the earlier programs. They're also year-rounders here, and do a lot of singing even in the summertime. This is the bird that has little warm-up notes before its song. It does some simple little warm-up notes and then a very complex part to the song, and then a very abrupt ending to the song. They typically perch on high grass or in a bush and sing this song over and over again. And it's a territorial kind of song, so it's becoming less. They do a lot more in the spring and the summer, but they're still singing. very abrupt end. Just, it's over. That time you put a little variation in on the end. Oh, here's a different one. A warm up, a few more notes than usual. He does 4 or 5 warm up notes on this one. Okay. I'm going to play very briefly one part of the Tufted Titmouse song. Tufted Titmouse is a great singer with a lot of variety in its songs. And there's so many different ones that I say to myself, if I hear a bird song and I don't recognize it and it's really loud, it's probably a tufted titmouse. But they have one song that is very distinct to them, and it's really their springtime and breeding song, so you won't hear it much now, but I just want to play it for you so when the time comes you will recognize it. You can use the mnemonic device here, here, because that's what it sounds like. It's here, here. This is the song. When you hear this in late winter, you know that spring is coming, because the titmouse is starting to sing. I would like, oh gosh, we're late here. Let's see, I'm going to have to skip some of these. I want to be sure to hit the Chimney Swift though, because this is one that's happening right now. Chimney Swifts are still with us, and they're getting ready to fly down to South America, probably at the end of the month. But they're still doing their chitter chatter up in the sky, and when you hear it, you know that that there will be swifts in the sky. So look up, and very high in the sky, you'll see the tiny little black birds flying around. This is that's the twittering sound of many chimney swifts. And I've seen now lately a flock of 10 or 12 flying over my house. I don't know how many more we can do, Mina. What do you think?
Let's see, I gave this program until about 11:15. So what do you guys think? Should we do a couple more bird songs and then?
All right, I'll do one more.
Okay.
And then I'll take some questions if there are any. This one is, I'm doing this for sentimental reasons because it's my absolute favorite bird song. I do have to spell it right though.
People are saying, a couple of people have said more bird songs.
Well, okay, I'll do some more, but I do want to do this one. The wood thrush is the symbol of declining migratory birds in America, because this bird its population is diminishing very fast, and I certainly have noticed it in my lifetime. It used to be the sound of summer here, and now we rarely hear it. Once in a while, a wood thrush will pass by in the springtime, but they're not staying around here anymore. Mainly, I think the numbers are dwindling because the numbers are dwindling in their winter range. They're threatened by deforestation and development and burning of the forests in Central America and South America where they winter. So to me, this is the most beautiful sound of any bird that sings in North America. And it has this ethereal quality. I'll never forget a camping trip that I took not too many years ago in the Adirondacks, where we had right behind our tent site a wood thrush deep in the deep forest, and just singing all day long with this beautiful, haunting, sort of flute-like song. The song of the wood thrush is really complex. It's one of these songs where the bird puts together combinations of notes and then repeats the patterns and varies the patterns and brings up other patterns. And you could study wood thrushes, I think, for the rest of your life and not really understand what they're saying, but they definitely are talking to other wood thrushes. And for this one, I liked best this particular. If you get down here to the Mccauley Library, audios, that they rank them top rated or not, but they have thousands of recordings of birds, and you can hear thousands of them on this website. You can pull these up. Sometimes they have the voices of the catalogers who are giving catalog numbers before, but this is the one that I think I liked the best. Let's see. Okay, here we go.
LNS catalog number 168331.
Well, you can get the impression of it. Just gives me goosebumps to hear those birds, but they sing in a usually pick a quiet time, and the voice just echoes in the woods. The flute-like quality of their sound is just so beautiful. If we have just a couple minutes, I do want to play you a couple of owls, because owls are starting to sing now at night, and if you don't use air conditioning, you might get to hear some owls. Here's a screech owl. This is a little owl that's not as common as it used to be. Again, I mean, I sound like a broken record, but the fact is that our birds are diminishing. Here's the song of the screech owl. Kind of a whinny. Okay, and then they also have this little trill sound, and sometimes the trill will precede the whinny, and sometimes you'll just hear the trilling. Now you will always hear an owl, because, I mean, you'll know it's an owl because it's at night, and other birds don't sing at night, but owls sing after dark. That's this very small eastern screech owl, and here is the great horned owl, which is the biggest owl around us. And I've been hearing these lately. I've been hearing more great horned owls than screech owls for several years now. So I have the feeling that the great horned owl population is increasing a bit, or maybe it's just in my neighborhood. But this one that I'm going to play, you'll hear another owl echoing in the background. Much deeper voice than the screech owl. Now we'll hear the close one again. And very faintly in the distance, I don't know if you could even hear that. Sometimes if owls are closer to each other, they will sound like a duet. Here's two owls, it's probably a male and a female, singing with each other. One overlaps the other one. Nope, we're going to. One of them is constantly interrupting the other one. I think that's funny. So some people confuse the owl with the mourning dove. So I just want to play the mourning dove song so you'll hear both of them close together. Here is the call of the mourning dove. Both are kind of a cooing sound, but the mourning dove, of course, is going to be singing in the daytime. Owls will only sing at night. So I think that's all that I'll do, but I'll see if there are any questions. I'm going to, before I stop the screen share, though, I do want to show you, just so this is on the recording, a couple of resources about bird song. This is The Singing Life of Birds by Kreutzma that I recommended before. Let me put this on. Oops. Okay. And Birding by Ear, which I've mentioned also before, but this is a CD set. It's old, but it's still in print, and it's really good. It groups birds together by songs that sound alike. So it's a very good training thing for learning to listen to birds. There are a couple of new books on birds that I'd like to point out, both in the library. These are brand new books. The Bird Way by Jennifer Ackerman is a really interesting book about birds and has a whole chapter about song and why birds sing, how they sing. And then David Allen Sibley has a new book out besides his field guides, and this is What It's Like to Be a Bird, and he has probably done more bird watching than almost anybody in America, so he probably knows as much. I have not read his book yet because there's too big a list on it, but it definitely is worth looking at, and of course it has his beautiful pictures in it too. So now I'm going to stop the screen share.
And I'm going to ask Amy, you said you have a question about the great horned owl sounds. So Amy, if you want to, oh, you're unmuted. Go ahead, Amy.
I just unmuted. Hi, thank you. This is lovely. What a wonderful weekend activity. So we have a great horned owl in the neighborhood. He's been spotted, so we know he's there.
Mhm.
He his timing seems to be off though, because frankly, he's been heard, and it's definitely him, not a or her, not a mourning dove, as early as like 2:30 in the afternoon, and as late as 10 in the morning.
Oh gosh.
But is actually nicknamed him Always because he's always hooting. And I mean, he starts in about November. He continued into April this year, which seemed really weird to us. I don't know if you have any thoughts about our
Well, yeah, that's interesting. I don't know why he sings in the daytime. I have no idea. I'll have to read up on that. But owls do generally they start singing in late summer and they sing all through the winter. And I think they're singing to defend their territory, to attract the mates. The whole process of breeding in an owl takes a lot longer than it does in the smaller birds. So, so that they're starting their courtship in the fall and then into the winter time. And the chicks are born pretty early in the spring, or late winter, really. So I don't know. That's really great. I wish I had an owl like that in my neighborhood. Take care of some of the rabbits.
It was interesting because first I thought, oh, it can't possibly be the owl, even though it sounded just like it. So I actually pulled up a recording, and it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. I pulled up a recording and played it, and it started interacting with the recording.
Oh gosh! Have you seen the nest? Have you found the nest?
We haven't. Oh, you've seen the nest?
Yeah, I saw it on a branch in a tree, but I didn't see the nest.
Yeah.
Silhouetted around dusk.
They
Very large.
they make big nests of sticks that are kind of like a hawk's nest. It has to be a pretty big nest because they're pretty big birds.
Yeah, it's in our neighbor's yard that he's always there. I mean, I keep saying he, but it's every time it's been spotted, it's been in our neighbor's trees.
Yeah.
So it's got to be somewhere over there, and we can't see all of the trees. They have a pretty wooded backyard. So
yeah. Oh, that's great.
yeah, no, it's lovely. He's very loud. I mean, you can hear him indoors with the windows shut. So
the owl, not the
yeah. But okay, well, we were just really curious because this thing, well, everybody calls him out Always now because it's been marked upon him in the neighborhood. Okay,
thank you. Oh, sorry. So Cary says, what is the difference between the Birds of the World database and the Mccauley Library?
Well, the Mccauley Library is the library of the media at Cornell in the ornithological laboratory. It's a multimedia library it's I guess the biggest one in the world that has thousands and thousands of recordings and videos of birds, mostly birds, but also other animals. So the Birds of the World database draws on this library for these video clips and these audio clips that you can hear. And I don't think you get to listen to all of the recordings that are in the library, but a good portion of them for every species of bird have been put onto the database so they're accessible.
Okay.
What I miss though is the cataloging. I would like to have, it would be nice if you had more of a description of what you're hearing, because sometimes there's just a word or two, call, juvenile call, female song, something like that, but not a lot more description. So you do have to kind of listen to everything. And be careful when you use it because birds in different geographic locations have different sounds, different songs. I mean, the songs of birds vary sort of clinally over the map. So as you get further west, the birds start sounding different. And even birds of the same species in a different part of the country will sound different than they do here. So.
Okay. Dana says, can we put our zip code into the Birds of the World database or some other way to find the birds that are likely to be in our area to try and determine which birds we're hearing?
I don't think you can use that database that way. There are some bird apps that you can get for phones, and Cornell has one called Merlin, which does do that. In fact, it determines what location you are at, and it shows you choices that are birds that you're likely to be seeing in the area where you are. So, and there are apps I know of, and I don't use any of these things, so I don't know from personal experience, but there are apps that allow you to record a bird song and then submit it to the app, and it will try to guess what bird you're listening to. I have read about these, and I understand that they're not terribly accurate, but at least they'll give you 3 or 4 choices that are probably going to be pretty close. The problem with recording is the recording is very tricky technologically, and especially if you're just using a little phone, the recording, it may not pick up the bird that you think it's going to pick up, the bird that you want. The people like Kreutzmann and other scientists who record bird songs, they do it with with directional microphones and mics that have a parabolic reflector around them that concentrate the sound that's coming from that particular bird. But if you've ever tried to just record, just hold up your phone and record the sound, you'll be amazed at how many other sounds you will get that are not the sound that you thought. The human ear is really good at distinguishing sounds and picking out sounds from a complex sonic environment, but the technology of the phone is not that subtle. But as I say, there are some apps, and there's one called Song Sleuth, and I don't remember the names of the other ones, but they purport to be able to give you a guess at what the sound is that you're hearing. I think, frankly, the best way to learn bird songs is to listen to them and then to try to see the bird that's making that noise. Because if you do that mentally, it will help you so much to remember what sound goes with which bird. If you're just listening to a cacophony of bird song and you don't isolate each song and match it mentally with a bird, it's much harder to remember the songs. And I find that season to season, it's good to go back and listen again, especially if you get into listening to spring warblers, whose sounds are each distinct, but also in a lot of ways very similar. Review the warblers before the spring comes, and listen to tape recordings, listen to the, make a list of the birds that you think you're going to see, and then listen to each of their songs before you go out. A really good way to learn the songs, I think probably the best way, is to go on bird walks with experienced birders who will make sure that you hear it and that you see the bird that you're hearing. There are walks sponsored by the Audubon Society and by the Brookline Bird Club, by the Citizens for Lexington Conservation, and hopefully by the springtime next year, all these walks will be available to us again, because that's just the super way to learn.
Oh, thank you so much, Jean. This has really been informative. You're getting a lot of thanks on in the chat, fascinating information, things like that. So thank you so much. I did
Okay.
want to say for any people that are still here, I'll put this in the recap, but we do have some birding programs coming up this fall. One with Ashley Rooney and Guy Duran, and then a series with Bill Getty. So we appreciate Jean bringing this to the forefront, and we'll continue doing bird programs because obviously they're really wonderful. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Jean, for doing this.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you all again soon.